And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on into the lunch show here on ClaibsOnline.com, powered by Gray Bar. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Matt Rocchio, in for Mike Claiborne this week. Rock, what's going on?
Not a lot, Joe Rod. How are we doing today?
I am doing good. Football heavy show for us today as week 10 of the NFL wraps up tonight, and tomorrow we get the second college football playoff rankings with lots of changes in store for that, with two of the top four teams losing this past weekend, and that's where I want to start today. More specifically, let's start from Mizzou and work our way back up, because your Tigers, Rock, pulled off one of the most surprising last-second wins this weekend, defeating Oklahoma. And in the words of Eli Drinkwitz, staying alive in the college football playoff hopes. That
Sure.
as someone who is actually invested in the Mizzou games, as you are, how frustrating of a game is that to watch on Saturday?
Well, I mean, honestly, considering like the amount that I cared about the Mizzou game dropped considerably after last week, and so going into this one, I was a little bit like, okay, no, you don't have your quarterback, you are out of the playoffs, in my opinion. So there's not that much to this game, but it is Oklahoma. You haven't played them in a long time, getting that Big 12 rivalry back in the dance. So I wanted to see something from this team overall, especially the playmakers who were healthy. So Nate Noel, Luther Burden the third. Those I wanted to see big plays from those guys because you weren't expecting a big game from Drew Pine. And boy, did the first half really play out that way. And we weren't getting anything from the running backs, and you weren't getting anything from Luther Burden, and you certainly weren't getting anything from Drew Pine. And then the second half happens, and I'm not sure. I mean, I had zero expectations for that in halftime to see that in the second half. I still don't know what exactly I watched in the second half, except for you got some big moments from Roberts, and then obviously the big moment from Theo Weiss Jr. And the defense made their big plays, despite the fact that the offense tried to screw them before possession before that. So I mean, it wasn't altogether great, but it wasn't even altogether good. But like Drinkwitz said, they're fighting and they fought for another win, and I guess technically they are still alive.
It is to watch them this year, and Claibs and I have talked about it so much, just the early season scheduling that did not challenge them at all and did not set them up for any kind of pressure moments later in the season. And to see how they have struggled I mean, just in SEC play, to see how they have struggled so far. You have had 3 home games against SEC teams this year that have all come down to the last possession in Vanderbilt and Oklahoma and Auburn. And your 2 road games so far in the SEC have just been abysmal. And to look at that and think that something's going to change this next week. I know they're right now? Are they 2 touchdown favorites against South Carolina this weekend? Is it 13 points the last time I think I saw?
ESPN has it at 12.5.
I mean, God, the way that they have played at home against Auburn and Oklahoma, and the eggs that they laid in Alabama and Texas A&M. Honestly, I look at that game against South Carolina, and I think the Gamecocks win that. They're at some point, Mizzou has to show you something that makes you believe that they are a decent team this year, and not just a team that's going to make a bowl because they, have played 4 cupcakes.
Yeah, and let's not forget, I mean, just how down of a year it is for Oklahoma. Obviously, a good Oklahoma team doesn't lose that game, but just Oklahoma's not good. And I honestly think if you went through and you watched and you talked to just the fan bases of Oklahoma and South Carolina, I'd say there's a lot more kind of latent positivity within South Carolina. Obviously, the expectations and everything is different, but the South Carolina team has shown a little bit more get up and go at times this season than Oklahoma has at any point. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And again, I mean, are we 100% confident we know who's playing quarterback?
Right.
I mean, that ankle injury is not, 1 week isn't the difference usually, or even, I should say 2 full weeks isn't going to be the difference between him not feeling pain and him needing some kind of, extra effort for him to play a full game. with him having to drop back, with how much he has to move in the pocket with the offensive line he's got in front of him. I just don't even know if we're going to see Brady Cook. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm not too confident about this one for the Tigers going forward, mainly because I'm still focusing on the first half, and maybe that makes me a pessimist. Maybe I'm a fool for not honing in on the 3 touchdown drives and the multiple touchdowns for Theo Weiss and Brent Norfleet getting involved again. Maybe I'm not, but I just think that the first half was a lot more telling than the second half, in my opinion. Yeah, you got some big plays going your way in the second half, but I can't get over just how inept they looked in the first half.
Both Georgia loses this week at Ole Miss. Miami, that was the surprise of the weekend, loses at Georgia Tech. The AP poll came out yesterday. We will wait for the new college football playoff committee poll to come out Tuesday night, as it will every single Tuesday night from here on out. And kind of looking at that, and looking at where the AP poll right now has teams, and we saw last week, I mean, the AP poll and the college football rankings will not match up. They will be different. These are different people doing these rankings. I mean, just for example, right at the top, I mean, Mizzou was not ranked in the AP poll last week. Yeah. They came in at 24. So Mizzou, you would imagine, is going to creep up a little bit. Is that 22, 21? What does that look like for them this week? But to see Georgia and to see Miami right now in where they are, first off, I just think right now SMU should be ahead of Miami. I think if we're sitting here and we're looking at it this way, that right now SMU is ahead in the ACC. They should be ahead of Miami there. And my feelings about Alabama, same as my feelings are about Georgia, is both those teams should be out of the top 12 right now. I mean, it is for Alabama to have lost 2 games already and to still be in the top 10. I think that we need to kind of take a step back and look at where we have some of these rankings of teams and some of these undefeated teams that are still left, and give them a little more respect than a 2-loss Alabama team that still has some tough games coming up.
Okay, so would you like it if in the top 12 both Boise State and Army were there? Would that be more telling, indicative, a better way to frame where we're at in the college football season? If those 2 teams, maybe not 10 and 11, maybe not 11 and 12, but do you think maybe it should be Army and Boise State 13-14 right on the edge?
I think Boise should be right now. So this is my prediction for the college football playoff rankings. This is my prediction for what I have. I went 1 through 13 with this.
Okay.
Oregon number 1,
yep.
Ohio State number 2, Texas number 3, Penn State number 4. I think that's followed by that. I have Tennessee at 5 and Indiana at 6. I know the AP poll has it flipped around. That's the way
and then, by the way, the coaches poll has Tennessee at 4.
Over Penn State?
Over Penn State, yes.
Okay. BYU at number 7. They're still undefeated. That's where I think Indiana, BYU both being undefeated. That's where the respect factor should come in for those 2 teams. Notre Dame at number 8. Bama, Georgia 9, 10. Not sure how you rank them, what you put into those rankings with that. Boise 11, SMU 12, Miami 13. Is Army?
Wait. Where's the Ole Miss?
I think did I leave Ole Miss out of this?
I think you left
Ole Miss out of this.
I think Ole Miss goes into one of the Bama Georgia spots that you're not feeling great about.
I think Bama goes. Yeah, Ole Miss would go 8. It would go right after Notre Dame. Then Ole Miss goes above Alabama.
That makes sense.
Ole Miss goes because right now Ole Miss only has 1 loss, right? Or they
Ole Miss 8 and 2.
That is going to be. I mean, when they sit there and they lock themselves in a room.
They lost to Kentucky in a last-second play, or not last-second, last possession play.
When they sit and they lock themselves in this room and they have to come up with all of this, and this is still 3 more weeks of games left in the SEC, and plus, I mean, it's very likely right now that you are going to have an SEC championship game that's going to have 2 lost teams in there.
Yep.
I mean, it is very possible that when this is all said and done, every single SEC team has at least 2 losses.
And honestly, that's kind of what I was hoping for at the start of the season. And so far, I mean, in my opinion, every positive factor that could have hit college sports, specifically college football, over the last couple of years, in my opinion, has made the game better. I think you're seeing more upsets because I think you're seeing talent is being distributed by the transfer portal. It's not being concentrated the way I think some people thought it would be. It's being distributed because guys say, why would I be the third receiver here when I can go be number one over there and really show out? So we're seeing talent get distributed. And now I just think with the playoff, I just think with the more upsets and even maybe with the way that conferences have come together, there's just a lot more teams clumped together. And I think it's giving us a better a college football season. I think right out of the gate, we're getting the best of both worlds right now, and college football is more fun than it ever has been.
How do you go about that when you because this is, I mean, when the selection committee is going to sit down and figure this out, I think first they're going to have, when they sit here, I'm just talking specifically the SEC right now. When you sit down there and you start looking at this and you rank, this is, again, we have 3 weeks left of games plus the championship game. You are going to sit down and map out the wins and losses of some of these teams and how the conference just ate itself this past year. And you're going to look at that and I guess initially rank your top 6, 7 SEC teams. And then you're going to have to sit there and think, okay, of the 11 spots that we have available in this college football playoff, I guess, or not even 11. I mean, when it comes down to it, I guess what, 5? Is it 5 bids?
Yeah.
5
the four top conference championships, and then the top group of 5,
and then maybe Notre Dame, and then or maybe Notre Dame or Army in this too this year. I mean, with the with this, so you're going to sit there and you're going to say, okay, so of these 5 spot at large bids that we have, like how do you determine which of those go to SEC teams?
Well, and the big thing that's going to throw the next wrench, and I think this is kind of the next big change that happens in college football, which is in 5 years, when we have the playoff, in 5 years, do we still have conference championship games? Because with all that SEC stuff, whatever 2 teams happen to fall out, and obviously you just said it, there might be, you could have just a ton of 2-loss teams. You could have a bunch of different tiebreakers, but right there, you're getting another game where, okay, well, that's kind of helping us delineate between, the top 2 and the next 5. And even so, it could hurt you if you get your doors blown off by like 4 touchdowns in the SEC championship game. Now, all of a sudden, you might get kicked down below the rank, the committee's thought process of that top 7 SEC teams. Now they're thinking, well, you might have been number 2, but when you just got your ass kicked, you're number 3 now, and now a team just jumped you. And so it's going to be interesting to see how conference championship games change things. And I honestly think the SEC is going to be the most interesting one. Obviously, the Big Ten with the glut of teams there, that one's starting to parse out a little bit easier. But SEC, that one could really change things that last final week.
Next week in the Big Ten, Indiana has the weekend off. Oregon is at Wisconsin, and then you have Oregon at Wisconsin, Penn State at Purdue, and I'm scrolling through here trying to look who Ohio State has next week. They're at Northwestern, so obviously all of those teams should win those games very easily next week.
As we're throwing out the Ohio State schedule, it is 2 weeks from now when they play Indiana. So, I mean, if they beat Indiana, now Indiana and Ohio State are both, let's say, 8-1 in conference play. And so, and Ohio State would then have the head-to-head. So now Ohio State's playing in the conference championship game instead of Indiana against Oregon. And so if Oregon, if Oregon shellacks Ohio State and that knocks them down 3 or 4 overall spots, does that mean Indiana, so there's a lot of things that just change. And that's why I honestly think there's a real question of whether or not conference championship games are a thing in the future.
Big few weeks coming up for football games in baseball stadiums. That Ohio State Northwestern game is at Wrigley Field this weekend. They're not playing at the makeshift stadium by the lake. They're playing that game at Wrigley Field this week. And then this is something we talked about. So one of the big tests comes in 2 weeks. You mentioned the Indiana at Ohio State game that's coming up in 2 weeks. What's really the big game on the schedule coming up in 2 weeks, Army against Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium.
Ooh, I forgot it was at Yankee Stadium. That's going to be fascinating. God.
Claves and I were talking about that game last week, and I was kind of like, it kind of sucks that it's a home game for Notre Dame. It'd be nice if that was more of a, Army had a chance. No, Army has a chance. If that game, Notre Dame will not have that home field advantage there. You will have a lot of people who want to see an underdog come out on top out there in New York.
As we're talking football, I just thought of something. Which team is going to be more universally rooted for in the months of December and January? Is it the Detroit Lions or is it Army? I think they're running head to head.
I think right now, because it's the first year of this 12-team playoff, that you want to see a team like Army make that a team that before, if Army in a normal year, if Army would have gone undefeated, if they would have gone 11-0, 12-0, however many games they end up playing in their regular season, if that would have been a normal year for Army, 100% chance they get left out of the group of 4. 100% chance they are not jumping any of those teams and being in a top 4 if they are undefeated. But in the 12-team tournament, they have a chance. In a 12-team tournament, you have to put in those undefeated teams. I don't care who you are. If you are an FBS team and you go undefeated, you automatically make that group. You automatically make that top 12, no matter who you are.
Absolutely. And I hope it happens. The Army storyline has been incredible. Obviously, I think it's funny just how much everyone loved as people are now calling it, the America's Drive from their game against North Texas over the weekend when they had a 21-play, 94-yard drive that soaked up 13 minutes and 54 seconds.
Yeah.
It's one of the people have clipped out off the full drive and put it on X and things like that. Go watch it. It is fascinating to watch that style of football being played in 2024 with the graphics on your phone right in front of your hand. It's pretty crazy.
How many, what was the total minute? Did you happen to see what the actual real time, how many minutes that
God, you know what? I did not see that. That'd be a good question. But considering it obviously ate up a quarter break, I imagine that was so 14 minutes in game time. Oh, geez. Yeah, that was probably.
I'm looking it up here. I'm not seeing.
I'm guessing that was a better part of 30 to 40 minutes of actual real time being played with commercial breaks. The quarter break, I imagine they had to get a bunch of commercials in on that one. I'm guessing that
current
was
drive, 26 minutes of real time.
That's almost a half-hour real-time drive is insane.
No, I'm sorry. Real time was it was 33 minutes real time. By the time it was over, it was 33 minutes of real time that that defense was out there on the field. Yeah,
that's amazing. God, I hope they beat Notre Dame. I hope they're playing in the playoff. I want to watch Army play football so badly in that 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I wonder too, because this is how they this is something to look up to in the weeks to come, is how the Army Navy game actually plays into all of this with the conference championships and the actual ranking of everything else too, because when it comes out, when the college football committee actually comes out with their final rankings, I haven't seen the dates and when that final 12 is going to come out, but that Army Navy game being a weekend of its own, again, if that could, I don't know what that changes or how people have to watch that game that week, or watch that to rank their top 12 that week. As we mentioned, Alabama defeats LSU. I think we can now say LSU is out of the rankings. 3 losses, you're done. I think as much as they would love to have an SEC team in there with 3 losses, I think that's the only way it could happen. I think right now, given the current state of football, 3 losses and you're done. Which, if that's the point of, okay, you have a chance, and I know this is kind of circling back to what Drink said, and this is what Claves and I were talking about last week when those first initial rankings came out, when the first selection committee rankings came out, I think you look at this, and the first thing I would wonder with some of those teams in the 20s, how much can I climb? How much can I jump up? So, for example, Colorado came in, they were the 20th ranked team. Do they have a road to making it into the top 12?
I don't think so, but again, it's
And I
always.
I should say I think Colorado's a bad example here because Colorado also has the fact that has that the factor, the entertainment factor of networks will want Colorado in the in the tournament of 12 because they'll want Deion Sanders and they'll want all those eyes on there because Colorado would bring ratings. So I think saying that might be the wrong one to use.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm guessing that if Colorado plays out the rest of their schedule, or I should say wins out the rest of their schedule, they would finish at 10-2, and that would include wins over Utah and Oklahoma State. Utah obviously below 500, so not either of those is not a good win necessarily. But at the same time, you then finish number 2 in the Big 12 Conference, and now you face off against BYU in the Big 12 Championship game. If you beat BYU in the Big 12 Championship game, it's kind of an all bets are off kind of thing, isn't it?
I would think so. And I think you jump them. I think the committee would jump them just for the fact of, hey, we can get Deion Sanders in the tournament. I think that's.
Well, I mean, and I don't think the committee wouldn't have to jump them, would they? It'd be SEC, Big 10,
I guess.
Big 12 Conference Championship, and then the ACC Conference Champion. The Big 12 gets in. The Big 12 Conference Champion gets in over. I imagine. I guess. Oh, if Boise State's still ranked higher, they would be in as Mountain West champion. That's the one that's still. That's. I guess that would be the other one.
Things just it's gonna be it'll be a nice little pain in the ass for.
If Boise State's still above them, Boise State gets the 4th one, and then obviously the Group of 5 one, the 5th one is Group of 5. That's completely off the center, so we're going to somebody else.
I'd have to look at what the standings look like because right now too, Kansas State, they do have 2 losses in there, but Kansas State would climb up as well, and Kansas State does have a win over Colorado, so I don't think it matters. If Kansas State wins out, they would have the tiebreaker over Colorado because they beat them head-to-head.
Colorado only has 1 conference loss.
The conference loss. You're right. Yep. Yeah, yes. Because of the conference loss.
All they got to do is finish out their 3 conference wins, and again, they're not that difficult.
See,
they're on the way.
In a year where we only had 4, these would be debates that we would not be having. So it makes it a lot more fun to discuss. By the way, just this random, as I'm watching through and looking at scores this past week and looking at who has who coming up next week and kind of looking ahead at some schedules for next week. Georgia plays UMass next week. For all the shit that we gave Mizzou for having UMass on their schedule, I don't know if UMass is trying to get into the SEC, but UMass on their schedule had Mizzou, Mississippi State, and Georgia all on their schedule this year for non-conference games. So I don't know if who they're trying to impress with that or why that's a thing. But UMass has really been into just getting beat up really bad by SEC teams this season.
In fairness, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe they're traveling to Amherst though.
They are not. No. George, they will. UMass is traveling to Athens for that. UMass also went down to Mississippi State, so they went down to Starkville for that. So they. Mm-hmm.
They're not the only SEC school that does that. Tennessee has UTEP next week. So, or not this next coming week, but the week after that. So Tennessee.
Oh no, and Bama, does Bama do they have their annual?
Mercer, was it Mercer? Are they kicking Mercer's teeth in again this year?
Is that? I mean, because they would always do one late in the season too. They would, Mercer. They're hosting Mercer next week. So
everyone, all the other SEC teams just decided to kick in some poor schools' teeth in the second to last week. Is kind of like a bye week late in the season where you can pull out your starters halfway through as you're up 45-0.
So that's but still, UMass to have 3 SEC teams on there. I'm not sure what they did to get that. We will take a break. When we come back, it is going to we're going to shift gears to the NFL and talk about what we saw in Week 10 right here on the Lunch Show, powered by Gray Bar here on Claibs Online.
Let me get this straight. Gray Bar is a distributor?
Yep. For more than 150 years, we supported electrical and datacom projects all over the country.
So you can get me products wherever and whenever I need them?
Yep. Thanks to our expansive national logistics network.
For any industry?
Yep. From construction sites and industrial plants to schools, hospitals, and just about everything in between.
So you could say Gray Bar is much more than a distributor?
Yep, you could say that.
They really do it all.
Yep. When you need a hand powering, connecting, or maintaining your operations, join the thousands of professionals who rely on Gray Bar to help keep them up and running. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Back here on the Lunch Show, Joe Roderick, Matt Rocchio in for Claibs this week, powered by Gray Bar here on ClaibsOnline.com. Week 10 is going to be in the books after tonight with Dolphins-Rams as your Monday Night Football game. Last night, I think one of the best Sunday night games that we have seen all year as far as the ending goes, as far as the play overall. One of the sloppiest games I think that we've seen on a Sunday night. 7 total interceptions in that game. One of them did come on a Hail Mary at the end of the first half. Another one was a forced fumble that just never hit the ground. So that was also ruled in an interception on that. So it wasn't like Jared Goff was just throwing it right to the other team on all 5 of his interceptions. 2 of them were a little bit of a fluke, but Rock, the Lions just persevering. You mentioned them earlier about being America's team here down the stretch. I don't know if that's the case. I feel like people will find easy reasons to hate the Lions down the stretch here, but still for them right now, I mean, they are the power of the NFC.
Yeah, they're biting their kneecaps off. I mean, it's just they're fighting through everything, and the easy part to fight is when you have a ton of talent. When you have a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs who doesn't have a great game but is able to break off a 20-yard play at any time. When you have Jameson Williams, who obviously has been problematic at times, but he's able to make a couple big plays. Obviously, you have Amon, Ross St. Brown. There's like 30 St. Louis on this team, Sam Laporta. So, I mean, they have a lot of talent. So it's easy to be gritty. It's easy to be lucky when you have a ton of talent. And I think part of this is also that the Texans are kind of showing some cracks that we didn't expect them to have after the first few weeks of the season. But, I mean, the Lions, they're fun to watch. And I think the bigger thing is that the defense has been able to make plays. Hasn't been dominant, but the defense has been able to make plays since the loss of Aiden Hutchinson. And obviously that was a big question. But, Brian Branch has seemingly stepped up each week since Aiden Hutchinson has gotten hurt. Brian Branch is already a very useful, versatile weapon on the Detroit Lions defense and their secondary. And he seems to get better and more impactful every single game. And so that's been a big thing. Get a guy like Carlton Davis. I mean, the Lions secondary has been a huge problem for ever. And so to get a guy like Carlton Davis as a big free agent signing a couple seasons ago, and he was okay. And so to have him get a big game like that against C.J. Stroud, that's not nothing for this Lions defense going forward. And I think they really are, like you said, one of the most dangerous teams in the NFC.
I don't know when. You would think at some point the loss of Aiden Hutchinson will bite them at some point. They haven't shown it yet. They have not lost a game since they.
Well, I think it needs to be said. One of the biggest reasons that the Texans have cracked is because despite having a ton of money and some talent at the bookend spots in Austin Howard and Laramie Tunsil, the protection for the Texans has been horrible this whole season. And so they've gotten lucky that they've played some good quarterbacks with some not so great lines. You come up against a good team in the playoffs who has a good offensive line, and all of a sudden the loss of Aiden Hutchinson will seem a lot larger.
Yeah, and I still think, going into this season, seeing how they ended last year with the way the Texans did, I did think that they would be this year's Lions. I thought, you have a young head coach, you have a quarterback that's still on his rookie contract, you're able to build around him. They went out and they got a lot of pieces, but it still seemed like they were going to be 1 or 2 pieces away from being that Super Bowl team. But I still thought they were going to have a great season. And I think maybe I would have expected the win-loss record to be a little better than it is right now. But that Texans team, I still think, is going to cause some problems in the playoffs. And I as I've said, my prediction at the beginning of the year was that the Texans would lose in the AFC Championship game.
Well, they have some time to figure things out because
right.
It's not like they have to worry about winning their division as everyone else in that division fumble F's around for the rest of the season. So, I mean, that's fine. They can just, I mean, the Colts, I guess, with Joe Flacco are going to keep maybe kind of keeping things just close enough that you got to think about it. But, like, I just think that the real thing for the Texans is going to be how do they look ramping up, across weeks 17, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah, and it's still to the point where I think they are good enough. I don't know who they lose to. I don't have a Super Bowl prediction. I just think they end up knocking off either the Bills, the Ravens, or the Chiefs along the way. And I think they do shock one of those teams and then end up tripping up at the very end. And they have the talent there for to do that. And maybe they lose a little bit of it with losing Stephon Diggs for the season, and maybe that doesn't allow them to get that far. But I do think that they should be in the same category as a dangerous team in the AFC, right up there. I mean, as a team that has the potential of knocking off one of those top 3, because right now I think it is a very clear 1 through 3 in the AFC with the way the Bills have been playing lately, the way the Ravens continue to play all year, and the Chiefs with whatever cardinal devil magic you want to call it that they keep winning with over and over again. It's I think 7 of their 9 wins have been come down to the last possession.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to last season, I think we're talking about like 13 of their last 15 games or something like that. Like it's an insane run that they're going on, and usually it cracks against you in the playoffs. And obviously, 2-time Super Bowl champions, 2 times overall, it hasn't cracked against them in the playoffs, or other than that one time a couple of years ago. And yeah, so I'm with you on that one. I do think that just take away the fact that they are the returning champions and they have Patrick Mahomes. Everyone agrees that the Ravens have, for now, taken a step away from everybody else as the number 1 team in the NFL. And I think that's fair. But again, it doesn't matter because can you beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? That's the only question that matters. We're now the Ravens now just are fine-tuning things over the next 10 weeks, maybe trying to slow down Derrick Henry so that he's ready to still run the ball in January and things like that. Like if I'm the Ravens, we know what we are, what we are. Now it's just, can we come back and actually beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, not just the regular season?
As you look at the way the AFC kind of lines up, I think it's, that 7 spot is up for grabs, whether that's the Bengals or the Broncos getting in there, maybe the Chargers too, as that 6 and 7 spot. It's 3 teams fighting for 2 spots at the ends. I'm not putting the Colts in that category right now with their quarterback situation being the way it is. But the Ravens, they do kind of have a decision to make as to where they want to end up. Do they want to start trying to play the game of where I'm going to place where we want to be placed in the playoffs? I think what our road is going to be in the playoffs, and looking at what their schedule was at the beginning of the year and looking at all the top teams they play, they still have the Steelers twice. Ravens Steelers have not faced each other yet. So I think,
the Steelers are technically ranked higher in the AFC North right now.
And I think after this weekend, I think it makes that whole decision a lot easier as to if you beat the Steelers this weekend, that's who they have on Sunday. It's Steelers Ravens this weekend. After that, okay, then I think we kind of have a decision to make as to who the path of the AFC North is going to go through then.
I also got to say this. If by some weird happenstance the Steelers win either or both of the games against the Ravens, then Mike Tomlin is one of the best football coaches to ever walk the planet. And what he's done overall, just with and how correct he's been about Russell Wilson, has just been insane. And it's insane that an overwhelming majority of the media and commentators across every sphere was agreed staunchly that this was a mistake and that Russell Wilson was washed. And Mike Tomlin knows better, and he's smarter than all of us. And apparently Arthur Smith isn't completely inept at drawing up an offense, which shocks me considering Atlanta the last couple seasons prior to this. So, like, I'm so confused, but I just have to tip my cap and say that if he can beat the Ravens, even if it's just the home win later on in the season, and maybe the Ravens are winding down a little bit, just the guy's one of the greatest football coaches ever. I don't know how he's doing this. It's unbelievable.
By the way, I have no idea. Watching the end of that Falcons-Saints game yesterday, no clue what Kirk Cousins and the Falcons offense was doing there at the end. Just so much wasted time to not even have a shot at the end of that game. That was really confusing. And then to see Mike Rizzi, the coach of the Saints, thought he pulled a Martin Gramatica after the game. I don't know if you saw that after the game. He was kind of jumping around, and then it seemed like lost all function of his leg and was just holding on to players to keep standing up. And I guess after the game said that somebody hit him in the back and it just got a nerve in the right spot, and he just kind of lost all nerve feeling in one side of his body for a brief period of time. Like it was just a weird thing that happened, but really thought that it was an Edwin Diaz, Martin Gramatica situation of celebrating and tearing your ACL or blowing your Achilles.
Yeah, that would have been hilarious. My personal favorite that no one ever talks about is Gus Frerotte giving himself a concussion. We don't talk about Gus Frerotte headbutting the helmet at or headbutting the wall at RFK Stadium and giving himself a concussion. That's one of my personal favorites of the self-injury stories.
So tonight, Dolphins and Rams, that is your Monday Night Football game. I guess the Rams are still in the mix with the playoffs right now. NFC a little more wide open than the AFC is. And I think part of that is because you have two division winners that are not running away with it, and the Falcons and the Cardinals that are letting everybody else. So they are allowing teams that are 8 and below to kind of have a chance. I mean, you can easily jump from being 8th or 9th to number 4 in the NFC just overnight based on a winner or loss. So it's a little more open in the NFC, but like we mentioned at the start of this, Lions are so good. And the way that you've seen some of these other teams play, I mean, the flaws that we've seen out of the Eagles, the Vikings, the Commanders, I think just makes it kind of anybody's game 2 through 7 in the NFC. So I just kind of look at that as, all right, yeah, the Lions are the best team in this conference. I don't know how you rank the rest of it, though.
Yeah, that's a really good point. By the way, I was just looking at, speaking of the NFC, right now, on FanDuel, you can get the 49ers to win the NFC West at plus 115, or you can take the Cardinals at plus 160. Or you could take the long shot. They're not going to win the division. But you could take the long shot Rams at plus 500. So it's interesting to me. And also, I think this is fascinating too. The Falcons are minus 750 to win the NFC South. The Buccaneers are plus 700.
If the Rams win tonight, that significantly changes everything.
That's kind of what I was thinking, because all of a sudden they're literally 5-4 right with the 49ers, and you can get them at plus 500 where the 49ers are plus 115 right now on FanDuel. Honestly, I think it's crazy that, I know it's a 2-game separation now between the Buccaneers and the Falcons, but I think it's crazy that it's it's minus 750 for the Falcons and plus 700 for the Bucs. Like, no, if you're telling me it would shock you if the Bucs and the Falcons were 6-6 in 2 weeks,
right.
That wouldn't shock me at all.
Buccaneers have a bye week, so here's
3 weeks.
Here's the Buccaneers. Whatever it would throw whatever money you have, you're able to do right now on the Buccaneers to do that, because here is the Buccaneers' next 4 weeks.
Okay.
They have a bye week coming up, and then they have Giants, at Panthers, home against the Raiders.
Oh, jeez. And again,
Their bye week. Their bye week might be the most difficult of those 4 weeks.
Okay, and on the flip side, here's the Falcons. They're at the Broncos. They face off against the Chargers, and then they have the Vikings. Now they also get the Raiders and Giants later, and the Panthers after that. So it's still a little. They get the same lightness as the Buccaneers do, just a little bit later on in the schedule, but not the easiest games. Having to travel to altitude, even though it is the Broncos, having to travel to altitude, having to face off against a good Chargers team. It's the Buccaneers also still have their other Panthers game, another Saints game, and they're playing the Cowboys. So, I mean, It wouldn't shock me if both of those teams are sitting at like 10-6, 10-7, 10-6, like going into the last game of the season, 10-7 at the end of the year. Man, I like right now the Buccaneers a little value at plus 700 right now.
Yeah, that's the Buccaneers right now might. I mean, they should lose one game the rest of the year. If they lose to the Chargers, that should be their only loss from here on out, and they should be 10-7 in position for the playoffs. Oh, that's looking at that schedule. That is good things to come for those for the Buccaneers. Hey, let's take our final break. Come back and wrap things up here on the Lunch Show. Joe Roderick, Matt Rocchio with you here on Claibs Online.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Back here, final few minutes of the Lunch Show. It's Joe Roderick and Matt Rocchio in for Claibs this week here on Claibs Online, powered by Gray Bar. Rock, college hoops started up last week. SLU 2 games under their belt. You are much more locked into the college basketball scene right now than I am. To start this season, what do you like? What do you dislike from the games that you've seen so far?
Honestly, I've been really locked in on the Billikens to start, and I've been watching a little bit of the Missouri Tigers. Obviously, the first opening game of the season for the Tigers wasn't great as it continued the losing streak for Dennis Gates, but then they got off the schneid finally in their second game. He's playing. He's got a big roster, and he's playing a lot of them. So I don't really know what to think about the Missouri Tigers right now, because a lot of the players also don't seem to be playing roles that I expected. Like you expected some, Mark Mitchell isn't scoring from the spots that I expected Mark Mitchell to try to score from, or getting the ball in the spots or the sets that would allow him to score in the way you think he would. So that's confusing me a little bit about the Missouri Tigers. I'm hoping to watch their last game one more time this week, because again, I'm trying to figure out exactly what Dennis Gates' plan is. The thing is Dennis Gates is a very good coach, and I think that the 20-game loss is a easy thing to throw out there, but I still think he's a great coach, and I still think the Missouri Tigers are going to figure things out this year. I'm just wondering exactly what the plan is right now, because it's not super clear to me, but they're much smarter than I am, so it shouldn't be super clear to me. And the SLU basketball one I've been much more locked into, obviously, and that's been interesting, obviously, with the lack of Robbie Avila because of the ankle injury. Obviously didn't play on Sunday against Avila University out of Kansas City. He will not play. I was hoping maybe it was just that maybe he could get a couple minutes against Loyola this weekend. Looking like that's not going to happen. Maybe Wichita State in a couple of weeks. So I think it's going to be a tough game against Loyola. If you go back to the Santa Clara game, if you go back to just what happened on Sunday afternoon against an NAIA team, the ball movement, the off-ball movement, the offensive movement overall isn't exactly what you want it to be in the half court. Now they get out there and they got a lot of good shooters, they got a lot of athletes. So if they force turnovers and they're hitting their threes, they could beat Loyola. But without Robbie, it's hard to see the consistency in the offense, and the defense right now hasn't been able to lock in. Maybe you get a guy like Kobe Johnson back who's missed their first 2 games. Or maybe you get him back, 6'4", he's got a 7-foot wingspan. So you lose your center, but by adding more wings who have 7-foot wingspans, maybe you can compensate defensively there. Kobe Johnson is also a solid playmaker, a good three-point shooter, and again, a good cutter because he has so much length. He hasn't been there these past 2 games, so adding him in would be a huge boon to the offense, the playmaking, the defense, and those all 3 areas have really been problematic at times for the Billikens. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly who's healthy going into this Loyola game. But if I'm a Billiken fan, I'm a little nervous after watching the offense struggle at times against an NAIA team.
It's going to take it's still going to take a little bit of time before I get myself locked into hoops. This year. Was considering heading down to the SLU game this weekend, but if Robbie's not playing yet, that's one. Yeah, he's must see. He's the reason to buy a ticket to go watch the Billikens this season. So if he's not going to be playing, might be 2 weeks from today. Next time that they're at home against, I believe, Quinnipiac. Their next home game after this Saturday on the 25th.
We're all ready to smack around some posters, right?
What's that?
So we're all ready to smack around some posters, right?
Yeah, I want to see I want to see him. I want to see that guy. I want to see the guy play.
He's incredible. He's incredible. Even in the shortened time against Santa Clara, he had like 16, 5, and 4. He hit a 3. A couple of the passes he made were ridiculous. He didn't get assists on all of them. There's one where they got Isaiah Swope open on an extra pass from Gibson where Robbie drives the baseline and then hits a jumping pass, skip pass over to Gibson, and then Gibson shuttles it around. That stuff's not going to pop up in the box score as an assist, but that's the kind of play that you don't see a lot of other centers in the game.
We no baseball talk on the show today as we sit and anxiously await some free agents to sign. Roki Sasaki has been posted. He is a free agent. We didn't add him in to our free agent picks that was me, Claves, and Rammer did this offseason. I completely missed the boat on that one. But if he goes anywhere but the Dodgers, I would be absolutely just shocked.
Did you see Lance Brzezowski over on foul territory said he thinks he's better than Yoshinobu Yamamoto? That was 4 hours ago. That was this morning on foul territory. He said he thinks he's better than Yamamoto, which would be insane if one of the big teams can add him.
When they add him, yeah.
When one of the big teams adds him, I should say.
Right, and yeah, you figure out how to pay him later. But I think the money that you will get in the marketing money you will get by having 3 Japanese superstars in Los Angeles, I think will pay that contract almost immediately for them. So they what you try to do, just same thing you did with Shohei last year. You get that deal done before Christmas, and then you put those jerseys out for sale. That's the way to do it and make some instant money that way for the kids in LA that that'll have that jersey underneath the tree when it rolls around. That's the marketing way to do it, I think, and the way teams should kind of go and look at it. Rock, that's going to do it for our show today. Thanks for stepping in for Claves, and look forward to more of your basketball news and notes and talk that you will be providing with us during this season. Until then, he is Matt Rocchio. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of The Lunch Show here on Claves Online.
Nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. That's because the middle is the most important part. At Graybar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country, connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget, with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Graybar does that.
Who's this?